Hello, this video follows on from my previous one in which I considered a particle sliding down the surface of a smooth sphere. Okay, and what we're going to do this time is make the model a bit more complicated and a bit more realistic and see what happens. So what we have is still a large sphere of radius capital R, and this time instead of a particle, we are going to consider a ball of finite size. We're going to say it has a radius of lowercase r. Okay, and this time the surface of the sphere is not going to be smooth, it's going to be rough in such a way that it causes the ball to spin around as it is moving down the surface. So instead of sliding down the surface, it's actually rolling down the surface, and we're going to say it's rolling without slipping. Okay, so it's rolling down and the friction is just right so that it rolls without any slippage. Okay, and we're asking the same question that we asked in the last video, which is at what angle theta does the ball leave the surface of the sphere? Okay, so the one other parameter that I'm defining here is that the ball's moment of inertia is going to be some dimensionless number alpha multiplied by mr squared, so m times small r squared, where this m is the mass of the ball. Right, and the reason for doing this is so that we can make it a bit more general, right? So if, for example, if the ball is a uniform sphere, then it turns out it's a standard result that the moment of inertia of a uniform sphere is 2/5 mr squared. So this alpha could be 2/5 if it were a uniform sphere, but I'm just going to make it a bit more general, just leave this parameter as alpha. Okay. So let's make a start, and we're going to start in the same way that we started the previous video. We're going to consider the radial forces acting on the ball. Okay, so again we're going to have a weight acting downwards, right? So we've got a weight, let's say that is mg, and we have a normal reaction force stopping it from going through the surface of the sphere, right? Let's call that n, and this angle here is theta from geometry, right? And so the radial force inwards, we've got mg cos theta acting inwards, and we've got n acting outwards, so we subtract that off, and then that has to be equal to the centripetal force, which is mv squared, and because the ball now has a finite size, the radius of its circular motion is not just capital R, but it's capital R plus small r. Okay, so far only one small difference, which is we had to add on this lowercase r. Okay, and again we're going to say that at the instant when it leaves the surface of the sphere, the normal reaction goes to 0 because it's no longer in contact, and so if we take n to 0, we just get that g cos theta is v squared over r plus r. Okay, so far not very different, all we've got is this extra r. So the main difference comes when we think about how to get an expression for this v squared. Okay, so as we did in the previous video, we're going to consider the energy to do that, okay, because kinetic energy is a half mv squared, linear kinetic energy is a half mv squared, and so that kind of gives us a hint that we should be thinking about energy. Right, so let me just do a little aside, kind of down here, think about how to write the kinetic energy of this ball, right? So the initial kinetic energy, right, is going to be 1/2 times mu squared, right? That's the linear component of the kinetic energy, but it's also going to be, if it's rolling without slipping, it also has to be rotating, right? And the rotational kinetic energy in general is given by 1/2 times I times omega squared, right, where I is the moment of inertia and omega is the angular speed, okay, the angular speed, and so there we go. So we've got linear kinetic energy and rotational kinetic energy, and then with this I omega squared, what can we do with that? Well, the fact that it's rolling without slipping, that implies a very important condition on the angular velocity. What this means is that the linear velocity has to be the radius of the ball times the angular velocity. Okay, this basically comes from the fact that there is no relative motion between the surface of the ball and the surface of the sphere, right? Because it's not slipping, right? So this comes from considering a point on the surface of the ball as it rotates around without any relative motion with the surface of the sphere. Okay, so we have this condition, okay, and so what we can do with that is, well, we can use this and also this moment of inertia, right? So the moment of inertia we said was mr squared, okay, but then we are supposed to have omega squared, but omega squared is just going to be, well, u squared over r squared, okay? So from this condition up here. So this is the initial energy, and what we can do is factorize out a 1/2 mu squared, okay? And so the first term we just get a 1 because it just is a 1/2 mu squared, and then these r squareds cancel, okay? And so you end up just getting 1 plus alpha in your brackets, okay? So that is our kinetic energy, which includes linear and rotational components. So what that means is, if we think about the kinetic energy when it is at this point here, right, after it's rotated around by an amount of theta, and it's going at a speed of v, right, it's going to have a kinetic energy of a 1/2 mv squared times 1 plus alpha, okay? And that must have come from, well, firstly, it had some initial kinetic energy, 1/2 mu squared times 1 plus alpha, but it's also lost some gravitational potential energy, and so that gets added into the final kinetic energy, right? So the gravitational potential energy that it's lost is going to be mg times h, where h is the height that it's moved down by, right? So h is basically like it started up here and it finished down there, so it's kind of this vertical height here, okay? So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about how we get that. I did talk about the method for that in some detail in my previous video. Basically, what we have to do is take the radius of the circular motion, which here is going to be big R plus small r, and then we have to subtract off that times cos of theta, right? Which is basically because we have a right-angled triangle here, here's a right angle, and then this component here, this part here, is equal to r plus r times cos of theta, right? So we take the whole radius of the circular motion and we subtract off this bit there. Okay, so there you go. Here's our expression, here's our equation, which expresses conservation of energy. And if we just tidy this up a bit, we can write this as v squared is u squared plus 2g, so multiplying up by 2 and dividing by 1 plus alpha, so we get 2g r plus r over 1 plus alpha, all multiplied by 1 minus cos theta. Okay, so we can just plug this back into here, right, where we had this expression for, where we had v squared appearing in our equation. So we can say that g cos theta has to be, well, firstly we get u squared over r plus r from this term here, and then we're going to get another term which is simply 2g over 1 plus alpha, right? So again, I'm expanding these brackets as I substitute in, so 2g over 1 plus alpha, because this r plus r cancels when we do this division here, okay? And then finally we have to subtract off 2g cos theta divided by 1 plus alpha. Right, so let's put all the cos thetas on the same side, and let's also divide by g. So we got 1 cos theta on the left, so let me write down here 1, and then we take this 2 over 1 plus alpha to the left hand side, so 1 plus 2 over 1 plus alpha times cos theta, okay, cos theta is equal to u squared, well, I've divided by g, so it's going to be u squared over g times r plus r, okay, and what else do we have? We just have this 2 over 1 plus alpha, right, from this term there. Okay, let's just quickly simplify this. So 1 plus 2 over 1 plus alpha, well, what we can do is write the 1 as 1 plus alpha, over 1 plus alpha. That's still 1, right? And so then you can just add the numerators because the denominators are the same. So this turns out to be 3 plus alpha over 1 plus alpha. Okay, so this whole prefactor here is 3 plus alpha over 1 plus alpha. And so what that means is that cos theta itself has to be, let me write it a bit further to the left, cos theta is 1 plus alpha over 3 plus alpha, right? So I've taken this prefactor to the other side, flipped it upside down, and we've got u squared over g into r plus 2 over 1 plus alpha. Let's just put everything over the same denominator. After maybe 1 or 2 lines of algebra, this can be shown to be the same as 1 plus alpha times u squared plus 2g into r plus r. Okay, 2g into r plus r. Then the whole thing is divided by 3 plus alpha g into r plus r. So there you go, not the most simple looking expression, but this tells us the angle at which the ball is going to leave the surface. Okay, so here's our general expression for the angle at which it's going to leave the surface. I would just like to take a few moments to think about some of the implications of this result. And the first thing I want to do is show how we can recover the result of the previous video where we considered a particle sliding down a smooth sphere. Okay, and so the way we can do that is firstly, well, let the ball become a particle. Particles don't have any physical size, so we can let small r go towards 0, okay? And we also, it's not going to be rotating, right? If the surface of the sphere is smooth, it's not rotating, so it's not going to have any rotational kinetic energy. So what we can do is also let alpha go towards 0, right? Remember, alpha was this number that parameterizes the moment of inertia. And so if alpha goes to 0, then it doesn't have any rotational kinetic energy, okay, which is the same as what we had in the last video. So if we take both of these limits, right, so r and alpha both go towards 0, then if we do that, what's going to happen? Theta will go towards the inverse cos of well, 1 plus alpha just becomes 1, so we get u squared. Then the small r disappears, so u squared plus 2gr, and then divided by, well, this alpha disappears on the bottom, so does the small r. So we divide by 3gr, and that's exactly what we derived in the previous video. Okay, so we can recover the simpler case from this general case by taking these limits. Okay. One other thing which we also investigated in the last video was the condition for the particle to leave the surface immediately, so rather than actually rotate around. So let's do the same thing here, and we want to find the condition for the ball to just leave the surface of the sphere straight away without actually doing any circular motion. So the condition to leave immediately is basically that theta goes towards 0. Okay, so if theta goes towards 0, the argument of the inverse cos has to be 1, right, because cos of 0 is 1. And so what that means is the numerator of the fraction, which is 1 plus alpha u squared plus 2gr plus r, that has to be equal to the denominator of the fraction, right, which is 3 plus alpha g r plus r. And then what happens is, very nicely, we get 1 plus alpha u squared. If we subtract off 2g r plus r from both sides, what we end up with on the right hand side is, because we have a 3 here and we subtracted off a 2, we just get 1 plus alpha g r plus r, and the 1 plus alpha just cancels, right? So this cancels, okay? And so what we know then is that it is going to leave immediately if u squared is if u is root of g r plus r, or if it's any bigger, right? So it's going to leave immediately if u is greater than or equal to the square root of g times r plus r. Okay, so similar result to what we got last time, except we've added on the radius of the ball, which kind of makes sense. One interesting thing to note about this is that this doesn't depend on alpha at all, right? So it doesn't depend on the moment of inertia of the ball. And I think the way to interpret that is that, well, if it's leaving the surface immediately, it doesn't have any time to actually, start spinning around. Okay, and so this result doesn't care about the moment of inertia, because if it just leaves the surface immediately without rotating around, it doesn't have time to actually start spinning and gaining any angular velocity, right? So that's my interpretation of why alpha doesn't end up appearing in this final expression. So there we go. Again, not an easy problem, but pretty interesting and kind of nice to consider these implications of the result at the end. So see you again soon to do some more interesting maths and physics problems.